Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hello Firstname Podcast Season 2. My name is Rasmus Schlosser, author of the book Hello Firstname, and the theme of this season is how to solve the content crisis for personalization. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hello Firstname Podcast. The theme of this season is how to solve the content crisis in personalization. Because solving the content crisis is what stands between us finally being able to scale personalization in the way we marketers have always wanted. How does the content layer look when we zoom in on that? Right from the birth of master content and into having a one-to-one personalized execution content for each customer. How can Gen AI help us in making the content pipeline flow more efficiently? What are the do's and don'ts? What are the top use cases, the top tools, and who is already doing it? That's what this season of the Hello Firstname podcast is all about. So join me and several industry experts in making this season a great success. Today, however, we are going to focus more specifically on product descriptions and how do you master that. And in the studio, I've invited Rasmus Schlosser from Flying Tiger to help us discuss this matter. Rasmus, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Rasmus works as an AI manager and as such is spearheading the organization's endeavors with Gen AI and how that can make the business thrive. I believe at least that's somehow how you put it on your LinkedIn profile. So good to see you. You have vast experience within especially SEO with a mix of client and agency side and now you're AI manager at Flying Tiger. So maybe first of all, for the listeners who don't know Flying Tiger, can you tell us a bit about what kind of business Flying Tiger is?
Yes, I can. So Flying Tiger is a variety store. We have around 950 to 1,000 stores in 37 markets right now in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. We just recently opened in Turkey a couple of weeks ago. So we're expanding a lot, which is really, really great. We're a variety store, so we sell a lot of different things from kitchenware to toys and party accessories and stuff like that. So a lot of people might know us from when they're shopping for Christmas or Halloween or any occasion like that.
I'm totally going, by the way.
Yes.
To do that. I'll bring my kids, and it's always good fun.
Yeah. Exactly.
And what's your background? What does an AI manager do?
Well, my background is mostly in SEO. So I've been working in, 10 years or something with SEO and in different companies and a little bit on the agency side also. And I've been working in Flying Tiger as SEO manager for a few years before moving over to the role as AI manager. So AI manager is basically trying to align what we as a company want to do with all of this new technology, and trying to navigate within the company how we can do it, figure out the data, the legal implications that arise on this, because Gen AI is a little bit different from regular IT, because it has a different way of working with data. You often have to share it with third parties and stuff like that. So a lot of what I do, and a lot of what I do is navigating how we can do these projects, and of course have some different projects, and kind of working as an internal consultant on different projects in order to move these things a little bit more formal.
That's perfect because you're at the frontier then. So
yes.
I cannot tell you how excited I am to have this this discussion. So my angle in coming to this is obviously from the world of personalization, and I do believe, as I also mentioned, that solving the content crisis is what we need in order to make personalization finally scale, and that AI could help that. But from sort of a broad level, if we're zooming out a bit, what does personalization mean for Flying Tiger? Where are you with that, and how do you perceive that topic?
I think that it's actually a really interesting topic, because if we take Flying Tiger as a historic company, back in the days, most of what we did from a content point of view was the posters in the stores. That was way before we had the online experience that we have today. So whenever we were trying to, get in contact with the customers, it was mostly through posters and more broad scale marketing. But today we have a web shop, we have email marketing, social media, and everything that we need to be more on focus with the individual customer, and of course try and deliver an experience that makes them want to use our company and buy our products.
Yeah.
So a lot has happened in the last many years, and just over the years I've been there, a lot has happened.
So just to paraphrase, so you are moving from like the really, really broad channels, and one of the things that I know you're also famous for is your very broad assortment of products. You're moving
Yes.
into narrow casting or being just a bit more specific, at least. That's what I
Yeah,
hear.
so yes, so we have people working on email marketing, social media, and different areas of the marketing funnel that just if we were going 10 years back, we didn't focus on those areas. And
Mm.
by having experts in their fields just working on things like email or social media, we try to establish a presence, and of course trying to sell our products through those channels in a more structured way than we might have done just 10 years ago.
All right, interesting. And then looking, I mean, you come from an SEO perspective. I was sort of making the assumption that that might be because that's where the biggest potential for Gen AI was to begin with, at least for Flying Tiger. Wow, if we could use Gen AI to help us produce content for, I don't know, long tail keywords and whatever, that would help boost our search engine rankings. But that's only one way of looking at it, and we're going to talk about product descriptions, which is maybe not quite the same, but could also have a benefit for SEO, I guess. What is the general perception of the potential of Gen AI within Flying Tiger? Are you looking at this like, oh, this is going to rock our world, or that could be really nice for these small use cases? What is sort of the level of enthusiasm, so to speak?
I think that the potential is really, really big, not just for Flying Tiger, but for all companies who embrace all of these next new technologies. I think that one of the big things is that we need to find a way to merge everything together and follow the technology, because today we're talking about how can Gen AI, produce content or uh, make something smarter or faster or whatever. But there's also a lot of buzz around AI that some of it might sound smarter than it is, or
Mm.
there's always new tools coming out that just claim they can save the world. Um, so it's also about you need to be navigating within the technology and figuring out what's actually something that can bring you value. Because if you automate everything and you spend, let's say, 3 hours automating something that you could do in an hour, are you doing it to automate something, or are you
Yeah,
doing it because you think it's fun to automate?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And it's the same with choosing how you produce your content or how you allocate your resources on producing content. It needs to bring value.
yeah,
Um, so if you look at SEO, for example, there's a lot of value in content. We know that, but if your competitors has higher value content, or is better at link building, or better at getting the customer in, the value that you produce is lower,
mm,
or you don't get the click,
yeah,
which means that you might have spent a lot of time producing some content that doesn't give you the value that you expect.
yeah. That'd be a shame.
Um,
Yeah,
exactly. So, and if you take that in the broader scale, not just on SEO, but also on all other platforms, you can spend a lot of time and resources on producing some content. But if you don't know where to get it, or use the years of experience that you have in
yeah,
SEO or social media or whatever, if you don't know how to get the content out or get the value from it, it doesn't really matter.
yeah. That's a good
So
point. So, what's the point in having fantastic content that you made super efficient if no one's there to look into it? So it's
exactly. And what's also, one of the really good things about Gen AI is that you can mass produce content,
yeah,
which is, it's really nice. You can just, with one prompt or two prompts, whatever, you can produce 100 articles.
yeah,
But if those 100 articles don't have high quality or doesn't give you any value in customers or visitors,
yeah.
It's just cool to say that you created 100 articles
And I think there's a
in a
lot
minute.
of that within Gen AI.
Exactly. And
These songs that you can very quickly produce a song that's horrible to listen to, but it's kind of fun, or you can produce a video of a kitten that opens the mouth and does funny things, and it's
yes.
cute, but so what? So I mean, okay, so we can do this. That's funny. Let me get back to my job. So when do these things start to sort of converge? I'm
Yeah.
curious to see that.
But I also think that, it, exactly that with, cute videos or cute songs or whatever, all of these technologies that is not on the level that we need it to be yet.
Yeah.
It's important to still follow some of these technologies because they might be bad now, but in a year they might be really good. And it's
Yeah.
important that we follow the technology and figure
Exactly.
out a way to use it in the future.
Keep a finger on the pulse. I totally agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. If I have this presentation that I sometimes do about how Gen AI is evolving, and looking into, for instance, how image generation has evolved just over over the last 10 years. I mean, it was basically nowhere, and now it's kind of fantastic in some
Yeah.
cases. Of course, there are still some things that you cannot do. I've yet to see Gen AI make really good photos of kite surfing without messing up the lines and kites flying in the wrong direction. But we're getting sort of getting more of those edge cases figured.
We'll give it a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Today we're going to discuss the content pipeline in general,
Yes.
but we are going to put a tighter focus on product descriptions and how Gen AI has helped you make that part more efficient, because I know you're kind of famous for that. Yeah. So we're also going to discuss how the whole idea of product descriptions fit into the agenda of personalization. But first things first. So talking about the general concept of the content crisis in personalization. So that's a term that I'm sort of coining for the book update, the content crisis in personalization. How does that term resonate with you? Do we have a content crisis even?
I think that that's a very hard question to actually answer because we never had more content than we do now on every single channel that we have. You could just see, the amount of influencers that's out there today versus just a few years ago, and there's just content everywhere. And we're all just, as companies, we're kind of competing about, people's attention span. And that
Definitely.
also means that the content that we produce needs to be better or better at you know taking that attention from the customer. And we constantly need to be better at what we do in order to attract the customers and attract, well, in the end, sales to a company. And there's a lot of, if we just take social media, there's a lot of companies out there that's really, really good at it. And generally they take a different approach than what we usually see
Mhm.
in order to, gain followers. And I think that one of the downsides of generative AI is that it doesn't think for itself. So if you need to create something that is different or original, it needs to come from you and you need to prompt it within
Yeah.
the AI. You
Yeah.
cannot just say, write an article about a dog or whatever, because
Yeah.
you're going to
With
get
an edgy
something
topic.
that's exactly, you're going to get something that's very generic.
Yeah.
But if you can really work with an idea of what you wanna do and
Mm.
find ways to combine things or be more detailed on something that actually brings value to the customer, you can stand out. Um, and then you can just use the leverage of AI to be the content producer within your imagination of it.
Yeah.
So
That's
I think that
so we
that's
have a content crisis. What I'm hearing is that I mean, it's not difficult to get enough content. It's difficult to get enough good content.
Yes, and I also think that most people are a little annoyed with all the content that they're getting, which is not original.
Yeah.
I know it from myself if I'm on social media and I keep seeing the same thing over and over again. So, for example, on TikTok, that's what people do. They keep on reproducing the content that they know has been a hit somewhere,
Mm.
and then they do the exact same thing, to the exact same sound, which is, sometimes it can be fun, but it's just, it's not bringing value in
It
the
is an
same
echo.
way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's the same across all kinds of content media
Yeah.
that does that.
All right. So I think we do have some kind of content crisis, and especially when it comes to personalization, because I think creating good enough master content using Gen AI can be challenging enough. So doing it on a personal level is probably not much easier. So I'm working on this model for the content layer and the content pipeline within it, together with Franz Riemersma, who's my co-author of Hello Firstname. And we're doing this for the Martech Trends 2025 report that he's doing with Scott Brinker. So this content layer, so we've been tasked with sort of double clicking on this and finding out what is really there when you double click on it. What is your perception of this whole idea of a content layer? We've been talking about having a data layer, but now also a content layer. Can content be put into a separate layer like you do with data? What do you think about that?
I think that it can in one way or another. I think in the end, it's all about how it is perceived by the reader, whether or not it creates value. Because you, as a company or as a producer of content, can produce something that you find to be really, really good, or you can sit after you create something and you can, oh, this is really good, this is really gonna sell, and then when you put it online or whatever, it's not selling anything because you might not have taken, you might only have taken your own perception into what you produced and not what the customer is perceiving it should be. So I think that we as a company and we as businesses need to be aware of what we're actually doing.
Yeah. So having it in one layer, I'm thinking that some of the idea with it is also because you need to, I mean, one of the reasons for having like a data layer is because you would be able to use the data in multiple scenarios and use cases and channels and whatever. I think that's kind of the idea with the content layer as well. Are you going into sort of a more omni-channel approach to the way that you're handling content as well?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
We of course have we have our data and we're trying to use it wherever it's needed.
Yeah.
uh, and we're also sharing it with our partners. We have the way that our business is set up. We have some markets that we own ourselves and run ourselves, and then we have franchise for some of the Middle Eastern, Asian markets and stuff like that. Which means that the content that we produce in-house with us is not always the same content that's being produced within our franchise partners, for example.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we need to, we need to share data between that so that the message that we have can come out from both us and from them
Yeah.
within within our brand voice.
Yeah.
So I think that both layers are kind of extremely important.
Yeah.
And it's kind of up to whoever works with it to figure out what's the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the conversation before the show, you and I also had the discussion of when is something actually content and when is it data. And I think
Yeah,
we concluded that if someone is looking at it at some point, I mean, a customer is looking at it, then it's probably content.
yeah,
But there's probably not any content that you wouldn't store in a database. So in that
no,
sense, you could regard that all content is data. I think it's actually sort of a European thing more than it's America, because in America you can make everything scale with one language and one currency and I wouldn't say one culture, but to some extent you can scale pretty
yeah.
much using just the same language. Whereas in Europe, that's it's both our curse, but it's also kind of fun, I think.
But
Actually,
that's also one of the
broadening
really
tech.
good, that's one of the advantages of generative AI is that scale is, being easier and cheaper
Yeah,
for everyone to do because it's easier to translate things from English or whatever language you're into
yeah,
all of these other languages in a high quality.
yeah,
But from my perspective, it's also about, are we, going to keep translating things? Because if we take the cost of generative AI, it's kind of the same price to translate as it is to produce,
Yeah.
depending on the amount of tokens you use.
Yeah.
Which means that you can also start producing content in the local languages instead of just translating it.
Yeah, and
Which means that
that should be far better, right? And that's what I've heard, at least from
theoretical, yeah, from a
theoretically.
theoretical point of view, it should be better. I
Yeah.
think that for example, one of our best sellers, we sell a lot of cups
Mm.
or mugs, which
Yeah.
are formed or shaped as different things. We have Christmas tree mugs or strawberry mugs and stuff like that, and people really love these fun mugs.
For a reason.
But of course, but if we just take that as a data layer instead of a
Mm.
product, we take that and say, okay, so a mug is just a data for us, and we want to sell that product. We want to sell it in the UK, and we want to sell it in Italy, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we know, okay, the UK is really big on drinking tea, and
True.
they love their tea, but in Italy it's more coffee. And if we just produce one product description that says this mug is great for coffee,
Yeah.
it might sell really good in Italy, but might not sell as good in the UK.
Yeah.
But if we can go in and try and add some culture
Yeah.
within producing this content, so that in Italy it focuses on coffee, or in the UK it focuses on tea, or maybe somewhere else it
Yeah.
focuses on hot chocolate or whatever, that
Yeah.
would make sense. I think that would also help us sell more mugs in the end.
Definitely.
Um,
Glühwein in Austria around
yeah,
or vin chaud for the French Alps. I don't know. Yeah, that's
exactly.
a really interesting. That's one thing you actually implemented. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Not yet. It's kind of an idea that we're
Yeah.
still working on. It's not just something that you do, because we still have the technical setup that we do,
Yeah.
which at the moment it's not completely ready to do something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because when you produce product descriptions to a website like ours, you
Mm.
go through the technical setup that we have. It goes into the engine, if you can call it that, of the web shop, and then we have an engine on top of that that translates. In order to move to something where we can actually go on a cultural level and produce, we need to take a look at the technical setup and figure out how can we inject it into the final layer. And that also means that we would have to change the technical setup a bit,
Yeah.
or at least look a step further back than we would in a normal setup.
All right. So it
So
looks as if you kind of figured it out already what you want to do, but now it takes a lot of molding to get that content pipeline in place for, in this case, the product descriptions. But
yeah,
is that the biggest hurdle with like creating, managing, and serving product data? Is that the ironing out or making it implemented in the existing system setup, or what would you say sort of are the biggest hurdles for managing the content pipeline?
I think the technical setup is one of the biggest hurdles,
Hmm.
and I think that if we look at web shops or websites in general, they've always been built in a certain way, because it has to be. If we just take Shopify or WooCommerce or
Yeah.
other web shop platforms, they're all built to cater to uh, a broad audience of customers
Yeah.
who in general has the same objection. They
Yeah.
want to sell goods, and they
Yeah.
want to sell a lot of goods fast and whatever. But some of the ideas that you get as a business might have to be built around that idea.
Yeah.
And if the technical setup is not you know built to be modular in that way,
Yeah.
you need to figure out how can we do it in a way where we might either get it to be modular in those
Mm.
platforms that we use, or we need to build something that can do what we want to do outside of that
Yeah.
platform and then inject it
So we're back to
into
the
the
whole
right.
thought about composability.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess in this sense, composability would mean a pretty big advantage, because it should, at least in theory, be more easy to you can more easily plug and play data sources and content sources and whatever.
Yeah. But we also have to, acknowledge that, it's not cheap to do something like that. And it
Exactly.
does take resources, and there's a big difference in the size of business that you have.
Yeah.
And for some businesses, it might actually be an advantage if you're smaller. If you're, for example, if you have a small web shop and you're building everything yourself, it might be a little easier to navigate than we have a big engine that
Yeah.
needs to, run in the right way. And we also have different areas of the business who has an interest in how things are done. Um, which
Okay.
means that it might be a little harder to navigate sometimes.
So where are you now currently in, I mean, using, because I can clearly hear you have a lot of thoughts about how to use Gen AI to make the content flow around product descriptions become more efficient. Where are you with that now in the process? Is some of it up and running, but do you have a hurdle here or there, or where are you currently?
So currently we're using custom GPTs to produce our content for our product descriptions. So we have a student assistant who takes the data that we have and produces the content within the product description that then goes into our web shop and then gets translated.
Yeah,
And that's kind of you know
that's where
the
you are.
way that it goes exactly. And
Yeah,
then we have, if we just look a year and a half back, it was actually a student assistant who was just, writing it manually.
yeah, yeah,
And, that took a lot of time, and the quality was a lot lower. Um, because, you get a little bored if you keep having to write
yeah,
kind of the same product descriptions
yeah.
or something like that. And
This
it
is
also,
also a cup. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly. And it also becomes very, small.
yeah,
Our our product descriptions a couple of years back was just 2 lines of text,
yeah.
and that was it. And that doesn't bring much value to the customer, but
No,
then there was something there.
yeah.
So just
Okay, so
having
actually here we are. I mean, we mentioned earlier that generating content is not what we need. We need to generate better content. But here, actually, it doesn't have to be super good to be better than what you had in the past. You're not
no,
pointing fingers at any student
it's
work,
like the no, it's like the old one, garbage in, garbage out.
I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah, but just having someone who can navigate the data that we use in order to
yeah,
produce the product descriptions, and just knowing that we already know that generative AI can take one feather and make 10 chickens, right? So you
definitely.
can
Yeah,
give it a very, very small portion of data and get
yeah.
a large amount out if that's what you need.
It will invent
Um,
the remaining feathers for the chicken.
Exactly. And then you can take the other discussion whether or not, is the output SEO optimized? Is, all of those things also
Yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be in order. And we don't just want to inject a lot of keywords or just put in a lot of stuff that doesn't give any value to the
No,
customer.
but I guess you
Um,
can have a separate agent. I mean, so one agent for producing the content and another one for reviewing it. But currently, are you manually reviewing the product descriptions to see that they're not rubbish or weird or
yes, manually right now. And then it goes into the system and comes online whenever the product is ready.
yeah, okay. And I could imagine with the suppliers that you probably have, I could imagine that not all of them are submitting the best content quality for the product descriptions, for instance. So
No, not always. No.
yeah. All right. So coming back to personalization and product descriptions, how are you currently using products for personalizing the customer experience? Product descriptions or product feeds or product recommendations?
We're not. So the product descriptions are not personalized
Yeah.
directly for the customer. That's we have a general product description for the product.
Yeah.
We do have product recommendations on the website that try and predict these product might be relevant for you. We do have some bundles on some of the products that says these are sometimes bought together and try and give people a little more in the
Yeah.
basket. And of course, we also use product recommendations in our emails and our ads on social media and of course Google ads. So we do try to recommend what we can, and we have some really good people in our e-commerce who also do gift guides and try and put things together a little more manually to give customers an experience if they're looking for a gift for the brother or the mom or whatever they're
Yeah.
looking for. Where AI is not a part of it, but we try and just take the humanity and figure out what might be a good gift, because we do know a lot of people turn to us for gifts.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much how I would assume that most companies are or would be using product recommendations, or and in that case also maybe not so much the descriptions, but at least the feeds of products with the properties that are the same across the enough to put it in a feed actually. But do you think how far could we take it? Could we potentially personalize the actual description of the product for each
think
individual end customer?
I think that we could. I think that there's, different views on that. Because if we take the way that we're using the internet right now, most people are using Google, they're searching, which means that we as a company needs to have a basis in order to rank on organic traffic. And if things are completely personalized, we don't have that basis.
Yeah.
So I think that, just from our point of view, it might be hard to do that within the current boundaries. But if we could just go a couple of years in the future, I think that the way that we search are also going to be different.
Yeah.
We often hear about how a lot of people actually start their search on TikTok, and some people start, if they're looking for products, they start on Amazon, depending on, the generation that they have. And we've seen companies like OpenAI get ready with Search GPT. We have, the Bing generative experience. Google have
Yeah.
also been working on an AI search. So I think in the coming years, the way that we search is going to be different, which is the basis of this. But I also think that in some future that we're also going to see companies like Google wanting to ingest content into the websites.
Yeah. Wow.
And what I mean about that is, for example, if you're searching for a product, let's say an iPhone or whatever on Google, and you click on an ad, then, you're paying some money to Google, which means that Google is interested in the customer buying from you, because if they can give you a better output, a better conversion rate, then they have given you a bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And I think that, Google knows a lot about us that we might not think about. And I think that at some point they might want to use that information to, for example, ingest product descriptions within a website to, let's say you're looking for an iPhone,
Yeah.
and you found that iPhone by searching for a phone for my kid or something like that. If they can then take, the names of your kids or the situations that they imagine you thinking about when you're looking phone for your kid, and put that within the product description on your website.
So what I'm actually understanding, and this is indeed a very complex topic, it is that in the case where Google actually knows more about the consumer than maybe Flying Tiger does, you let Google ingest the result of a personalized product description that is based on the data that Google has on the individual, in this case maybe me. So not sharing the data, Google is not sharing the data with Flying Tiger, but making the recommendation for you. And if I'm thinking then a bit ahead, probably they would also allow it for you, much the same way as you're sharing hashed information about customers already, to share some information that you have on the customer with them, so they can make the recommendation even better for you and maybe even monetize that further.
Yes, I think that it's very important.
That's intriguing.
Yes, I think that it's very important to say that we're not doing that now, that we're just, talking
Yeah.
about what the future could hold, because there's a lot of
Yeah.
legalities in this that, sharing data, cookies, everything that
Oh yeah.
would be relevant of a discussion before something like that this would even
Yeah.
be possible. But I do think that, a company like Google would be interested in actually doing something like this, because if they can utilize the data that they have in order to bring more sales to customers, or to their business
Sounds very
customers,
plausible.
that would mean higher conversion rates. That would mean more ad revenue, and especially with the way that search is changing in the coming years, if we go to more of an AI-based search instead of just the regular Google search that we know today, it would most likely also mean that Google can show fewer ads than they can do today, which means that also means that they would
find
need
new revenue stream.
Exactly, and this could be a way of doing that. So I think that it might be a little sci-fi to think about, and especially it's also going to be very creepy if we look at it today. But I also think that
I think we're moving extremely fast. So
it is, and
there's no knowing where we are
no, and I also think
there's no knowing where we are in 5 years.
No, exactly.
So that's
and the boundaries are kind of erasing themselves in a little bit that we don't really think about. If we just look at, I don't know if you saw the robo taxi event Tesla had last week, which is it's
exactly
really creepy, and it is mind-boggling and everything, but it's also very interesting to think about how we looked at cars just, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, before the idea of self-driving cars, until now, where if we just go, let's say, 10 years into the future, and there's no such thing as real driven cars or something like that, it's gonna erase.
I'm still looking forward to being looking really forward to being slightly tipsy on the backseat and then a robot driver taking me home.
Exactly.
To be honest, so
and I think that
we're gonna need to round off.
Yes, sorry.
We're actually getting towards sort of the end of the time that we'd set aside for this. So I just have one question left, actually. So what would your sort of dream use case be for how Gen AI could personalize the customer experience? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that from my point of view, I think that we're gonna get to a point where we get way more personalized with the customer in every single channel that we have. Back in the day when marketing automation was a new thing, just having Hello Firstname, as that well, was a big thing. But being able to send emails that tailored to the customer instead of just mass producing emails. Also, in some ways, I think it's also gonna mean that we're gonna have less contact points with the customer, because when we send out emails, for example, or if we send notifications in the browser, or whatever we do on social media, what we're always trying to do is compete for their attention. But if that attention can be boiled down to something that brings us more value, I also think that we as companies can send out less content than we might want to do today, because if the content that we send out has the gives us the value that we want, which is often the sale, we don't have to push as much. And whenever we send out an email,
that's a beautiful thought.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thought. I'm not sure. I think it'll take a while for us to go there,
so
because
too,
what I see with companies is once they become better at personalization, you also maybe take that as a chance to be even more pushy.
Yeah.
Right. Rasmus, thank you for those words. Let that be the last, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And to the audience, thank you for listening in on this week's episode of the Hello Firstname podcast. Surely there will be a new episode with you shortly. You've been listening to yet another episode of the Hello Firstname podcast. Remember that all models discussed in this podcast can be downloaded and are free to use. The original book, Hello Firstname, can likewise be downloaded as either the full audiobook or as a written abstract. All links are in the show notes. The podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, the omnichannel marketing automation platform, Agilic. Visit www.agilic.com for more information.